Well, I got to be honest here. I'm not really expecting that much out of this Thursday night game tonight. I think this is going to be a snooze fest. I think it's going to be an obliteration and an embarrassment to the Miami Dolphins tonight. I think, honestly, the one thing I might watch for tonight is if the Dolphins play as bad as I think they're going to, I think there's a chance that Mike McDaniel could be fired as soon as tonight. Like, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. I think if the Dolphins put up an absolute egg tonight, that Mike McDaniel could be fired and not be a member of the Dolphins by the time tomorrow hits. So, I don't know. That's kind of one of the only things I'm kind of watching for this week, just because I feel like this matchup just does not offer that much for me. But for fantasy football, there's definitely important stuff that is going on, and especially on the Bills side of the ball. There's definitely a lot of start-sit questions, and I think one of the biggest ones I've seen so far has been from Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman has definitely been the name that has been most popular on our website. On FS Roundup, you can go create a poll, and you can do this entirely for free, answering people's polls and putting up polls yourself. I've seen a lot of Keon Coleman start-sit questions today, so if I do not answer your question today, pose the poll in the Roundup. Pose the poll on FS Roundup, and I just posted a link to the site in the chat, and there's also a link in the description as well. So if you don't get your question answered tonight, go ask your question to the majority and get the majority vote on FS Roundup. Everything is up to date, and it's super fun to go through. So definitely really excited to talk about tonight's game, but like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. And let's start answering some questions. First up, Jeremy Torres, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Round up to the moon, baby. Well, let's go. I'm in on that. I'm definitely in on that. That's for sure. Round up to the moon, indeed. And Andrews or Njoku is, I think, what you meant. So, yeah, you know, with Mark Andrews, right? Like, I'm sure that he's hit a lot of waiver wires this week. And here's the thing, is that I actually think that a lot of teams could benefit from it. Now, I'm not telling everybody in here tonight. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not telling you to go pick up Mark Andrews off your waiver wire. But I will say that the reason I'm including it in this breakdown right here is because I think that Mark Andrews is going to get in the end zone. Like, he caught one last week, but it just did not, like, it didn't work out. Like, he had one, though. So the potential there is really, really really good for him to get in the end zone. So I'm not ruling out that he gets in the end zone. Now, with Njoku, you know, the thing about him is that I keep saying this over the weeks, like, he's been involved. I mean, he's got 11 targets through 2 weeks. That's like a little over, that's 5.5 per game. And if you just kind of go to the Cleveland Browns, again, all of this information is free on fsroundup.com. If you go to the Cleveland Browns, look at their tight end production, this is week 2, and you'll see that David Njoku and Harold Fannin were, you know, Njoku out-snapped Fannin, and if you go to snap counts right here, the amount of routes run, Njoku is still beating Fannin. So it's not like he's, like, Fannin is, like, all of a sudden the tight end won and Njoku is, like, irrelevant. That's not the case. Like, the case is that it's still a pretty even split, and Njoku is just flat out a better player right now. And in addition, like, I do think that it's not that much different from a game script. Like, the Ravens are going to throw, but the Browns are too, because the Browns are going to be down big pretty early by the Green Bay Packers. So I'm personally going to stick with Njoku right now. I think that it's really easy to be very reactive on Njoku, as much as it is to be reactive towards Mark Andrews, but I think that the reaction from Mark Andrews is more warranted right now because I just don't think he's that good of a player anymore. I think Njoku still is a good player. So I would go with Njoku this week. Adrian, what's going on, man? Appreciate the super chat. I know it's a stupid question. Hey, no such thing as a stupid question, man. Seriously, I mean it when I say that. Josh Allen or Mayfield, going by yards. Who can progress more? Thank you, brother. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a loyal member of FS Roundup as well, Adrian. First of all, it's not a stupid question, and I'll tell you the reason particularly it's not is because, look, like, the thing about it is that there's 2 parts to this, right? the first part to this is that, number one, Baker is a really good fantasy quarterback. Like, really, really good. And I don't think that it's like one of those scenarios where you have to, like, you know, I don't think it's one of those scenarios where you just have to play Baker or play Josh Allen regardless every week. I mean, it kind of is in a sense, because it's like he clearly is the big, he has the most potential out of any quarterback. Like, I do think it is, to a certain extent, like, you have to do that. But at the same time, like, Baker is one of those players that is easily one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy. And listen, the thing about it too is that with Josh Allen tonight, it's definitely going to be one of those scenarios where he is going to absolutely be crushing this team. I mean, he will be crushing the Miami Dolphins early. And so he's not going to have to throw the ball much. Like, it could very well go like what we saw last week versus the Jets, where they crushed the Jets and Josh Allen just isn't that involved. Like, I could easily see that scenario again tonight. Baker this week is playing the Jets, and I do think that they'll crush the Jets as well. So, and I think that it'll be more of a running game against the Jets, because the Jets just got thrashed on the ground by James Cook. So they can be run on. So my point being is this. You have two matchups that I think could be blowouts. So what I would do in this scenario is I would go with the quarterback that has the rushing upside, and in most cases, Baker has legs, but Baker doesn't have the potential on the ground for fantasy work that Josh Allen does. Josh Allen has more work and more upside in fantasy on the ground than Baker does. So, like, I think that if Baker was playing, the Packers, or if Baker was playing the Falcons, or if Baker was playing the Ravens, and they needed to throw the ball a lot, I would say probably Baker I'm leaning towards. But given the fact that Baker is playing the Jets that I think they're going to crush, I would say I'd stick with Josh Allen. But I'm not, like, that is not a dumb question at all. Like, there's nothing stupid about that question. I think it's legit. I appreciate the super chat. That is how you jump the line and get your question answered immediately, by doing a super chat. But until then, we'll just go from top to bottom. Marcus, what's going on? Start Ladd, Sutton, or Mason? So we're choosing one, and I think that Jordan Mason, the hype is real right now. And I think that it's warranted because he's playing the Bengals, right? And if you just look at, like, his effectiveness on the ground so far, he's done really well. Jordan Mason, 9 carries, 30 yards last week, but the week before, he was a lot more efficient. 15 carries, 68 yards. So, like, Jordan Mason looks good on the ground. I think collectively, yeah, he's got 4.1 yards per carry. Hasn't gotten in the end zone yet, but at some point that's going to break his way, especially now that he's going to get all the volume. The matchup's great. And I would say the same thing for with Sutton, the matchup is not exactly ideal, I would say. But, there is something, and I discussed this on my excuse me. I discussed this on the I discussed this on the wide receiver rankings. I just blanked out about the fact that Courtland Sutton has a strong history versus the Chargers. Like, it's kind of weird, but it's a real thing. Like, he does have a strong history against the Chargers in fantasy football. And so I'm a history guy. Like, I like to look at the history of players, history of teams, and a lot of times it repeats itself. So I do think Sutton's a really good play. I would play Sutton over Ladd this week, that's for sure. Like, I do think that Ladd's got a legitimate issue. Not that he as a player has regressed. He actually looks good. Like, if you actually watch him and break him down on film, he does look good still, but it's just the importance in the offense. Like, the amount of work that he's getting is just not conducive to what it was last year. Like, last year, he was getting what Keenan is getting now, right? The important third and fourth down clutch plays and a lot of red zone targets. Ladd was getting all of those. And he was also getting the deep balls for the majority of the season because Quentin Johnston was hit or miss last year. Well, Quentin Johnston has taken a step as a player as well so far. So there's just less work for Ladd. With Sutton, he's getting the same thing as last year. And with Jordan Mason, again, the matchup I think is so great that it's hard for me to sit him. But I will say this, like Mason and Sutton, pretty close to my rankings. They are. They are very close. So I will say that go with your gut because they're close enough in my rankings. But if it was me and if it was my team, I would be playing Jordan Mason because I think Jordan Mason, his upside this week against the Bengals, like that defense is so bad. And especially on the ground game, I think they're going to get ripped to shreds this week. So I would go with Jordan Mason. Next, we had another super chat. Julian Sanchez, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Got offered Gibbs and Brian Thomas Jr. for Neighbors and Hampton. My other wide receivers are London, J-Mo, Ridley, and my running backs are Achane, Kamara, JCM, and Mason. Do I accept or no? Okay, so you have London, J-Mo, Ridley, and you have Achane, Kamara, Bill Krosky, and Jordan Mason. You got offered Gibbs and Brian Thomas Jr. for Neighbors and Hampton. So obviously you're getting Gibbs to supplement your replacement of Hampton, which is great. But when I look at your running backs here, like you've got legitimately 4 running backs who could play for you. Like obviously Achane and Kamara are your start guys right now. And even this week, like I wouldn't play Jordan Mason over Alvin Kamara. I wouldn't. I would play Kamara before I play Jordan Mason. But, I think that you're in this position to where you're getting Brian Thomas Jr. and I think that can crush your team. Like the way that Brian Thomas Jr. has played. And listen, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a buy low, but this isn't really a buy low situation you're getting right now. Like you're getting 2 players that I would consider maybe buy low candidates, involved in this trade. One is Brian Thomas Jr. and one is Amarian Hampton. And then both these other 2 are studs. Now, with Neighbors, I do worry about him long-term a little bit just because of the fact that he is like quarterbackless, truly. Because like Russell Wilson will not be the long-term starter. I truly believe that at some point in the next like month, we will see Jackson Dart. And I really do believe that. And from there, I mean, destabilization is not the best thing for a wide receiver. So it's not that I want to stick with Neighbors, but at the same time, like Gibbs is going to be really good as well. And my thing is with Hampton, like, because that's really the holdup for me is that I don't want to sell Hampton too early. And for those of you who don't know, I do team breakdowns for those who are members of at FS Roundup. Premium subscribers at FS Roundup, you can get a full team breakdown from me. And I've been doing a breakdown on somebody's team today who has Amarian Hampton on their roster. And I've been telling them, listen, the problem with it is that you can't really like sell Hampton right now because he's just not worth anything. And you don't want to sell a player that has like a really good amount of upside. And Hampton does. Like, we just haven't seen it yet. But the upside is absolutely there. Now, in your situation, like, this isn't really, like, they're not exactly trying to screw you on this trade. Like, they're really not. So I think I would actually take this. It's funny because, like, I wouldn't have taken this. I wouldn't have taken this if it was a different wide receiver because I believe in Brian Thomas Jr. as a talent. So I still think that he's going to rebound. So, yeah, I think I'm going to take it because what you're going to build here is you're going to build like a studly running back room. I mean, Gibbs, Achane, and Kamara as your top 3 backs is insane. So what it's going to do is it's going to create other trade opportunities for you, right? You're going to be able to trade one of those other running backs in who sit on your bench, or you'll be able to trade one of those top running backs if Bill Krosky or Jordan Mason breaks out. So like there's a lot of potential here for your team to be able to make moves moving forward on the trade market to maximize your wide receiver room better if BTJ doesn't come through. Because if he does come through, you'll have London and Brian Thomas Jr., who I think both of them will come back and play really well in fantasy. So I think I would take this trade, actually. And again, appreciate the super chat, but these are just like my initial ideas on your team. If you guys want a full team breakdown, what you could do is you can go to fsroundup.com and you can sign up for the premium subscription right here. And you can, after your 12-day free trial is over, I will give you a full team breakdown once you're an official customer with us. So that means trade ideas in the future, waiver wire acquisitions to make, just ways to make your team overall better. Those are all things that I will include in a full team breakdown for you if you do want that. And in addition to the free trial, you'll also be able to get access to use the waiver wire, automatic waiver wire tool for free and see how much value there is in that, because that's saving leagues. Like already people have reached out to us and said, dude, the waiver wire tool, like this is a game changer. Like I'm able to get guys in the middle of the night off the waivers when everybody else is sleeping and trying to, get up at like 6, I've already got that guy at 3 in the morning. So it's a game changer. It's already being shown and people love it. So start a free trial today and then I'll break down your team once you're a customer. But again, Julian, I appreciate the super chat. Jules, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. In a pickle, Keon, Olave, or Smitty? Much love. Right back at you, Jules. Listen, you are a little bit in a pickle. I won't lie to you there. If it was a normal matchup, and by normal I mean not a blowout, like I think the Bills are just going to absolutely dismantle the Dolphins tonight. If it weren't that situation, I do think that Keon Coleman is a good start. I called him a buy low this week, and I truly mean that. Like I really do think that people are undervaluing Keon because it looked like a lot like what we saw last year with him, right? Like he'd have like one dominant game and then he would come back and do nothing the next week, right? I get all of that. But my point on it is that like last week was a blowout too. So we didn't really get like a full experience from the passing game in general. So you can't say that Keon Coleman is doing the same thing he did last year. Like Keon Coleman is in a position to where like you have a player that I think, based on the way he looked in week 1, is looking like a legitimate breakout guy. And if he does break out, then it's a wide receiver you want attached to Josh Allen. That's for sure. So tonight, I think it's going to be a blowout again. So like common sense is leaning no towards that in most situations. Now with Chris Olave, on the other hand, I mean, the guy has been heavily targeted. Heavily. I mean, Chris Olave has been targeted like freaking crazy. 23 targets through 2 games. I mean, that's almost 12 targets per game. Pretty crazy, man. And I do think that Olave, based on the target share, is more of a reliable start than Keon Coleman. Like, I think if you wanted stability this week, Olave is a better play. With upside, I would say Keon has more of it because his quarterback is just a better player. So like I would say that pick and choose based on like how you personally prefer, your wide receivers and the way you play fantasy. Do you want stability? Like a stable floor being Olave's, 12.4 points in week 1 and 11.4 points in week 2. Do you want that stability, or do you want the upside of getting a 25-point game from Keon Coleman? I personally am an upside guy, so I think I'd play Keon over Olave. And then with Devonta Smith, I've been having a lot of questions on Devonta this week, mostly regarded to should I drop him or not. So I'm glad this isn't one of those questions, because I would tell you not to drop Devonta Smith. But with Devonta Smith, this offense, this passing offense, like there just isn't much there yet for the Eagles right now. Like there just simply is not much there going on with the Eagles. So I don't see this as a week that is exactly going to change that either. I mean, they're playing the Rams this week, who have a really strong defense, number 1. And number 2, I don't know if it's going to be like some super high scoring matchup, because again, just the way the Eagles are playing football right now, they're just not throwing the ball very much. So I don't think I would start him. I would personally play Keon if this was me. But again, if you want to just like go for the stability and have a solid like 10-point week, 12-point week, depending on your format, if it's full or half PPR, then Olave is definitely going to be your best bet for that stability. Appreciate the super chat. Next up was Chris. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Full PPR. Trade McBride, Nakua, Connor for Jonathan Taylor, London, and Kamara. So you're going to trade McBride, Nakua, and Connor for Jonathan Taylor, London, and Kamara. You know, I had a question last night regarding a Puka Nakua trade. And I think Puka Nakua is... People are also catching on to this one. I think people are really catching on to this, which is that Puka Nakua is, I think, a legitimate league-winning player this year. I mean, just his usage in this offense, right? Like, Puka has 10 targets per game through 2 games, but it's not just that. Like, he's getting carries on the ground. He's getting work in other places. Like, the guy is a true wide receiver 1 in fantasy and a true wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Like, this has all the makings of a league-winning wide receiver right here this year. So I think a lot of people are catching up to that idea. So last night when I got the question of should I trade Puka, it was different than this. Like, Jonathan Taylor, I would also agree, has like league-winning upside on paper. I do think that. But I don't think it's to the level of Puka. Because I for whatever reason, and maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, I'm curious if there's Colts fans here who disagree with me, but I just can't trust this operation yet. I mean, I've just seen too much of Daniel Jones throughout his career to know that I know these numbers are not real. 71.4% completion percentage is not a real number for him. Like, he's usually hovering around 62, 61, 63, 64. This is going to come down crashing at some point. And how it relates to him, to Jonathan Taylor, obviously, is that, you know, it's just going to lower the overall upside of the offense. And not every week Jonathan Taylor is going to come out here and rush for 165 yards. So I just think that Puka is way more sustainable. And in addition, you're not just giving up Puka, you're giving up a huge positional edge with Trey McBride. Like, Trey McBride is a huge positional advantage. So giving him up in addition to Puka just doesn't feel like a good trade. Now, James Conner, like, you're definitely getting an upgrade with Kamara, but there's just not enough there for me to say that giving away Puka is a good idea. Like, I have not been struck with a Puka trade yet from anybody that has asked me to go through a trade for them to where I'm like, yeah, trade Puka away. Like, Puka, literally, I can't stress this enough, guys, feels like a league winner this year. Bottom line, like, he literally feels like he could win people their leagues. So it's going to take a lot more than that for me to be able to send him away. So I'll say no to that. Appreciate the super chat. Izzy Drizzy 9, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Coleman or Worthy this week? Well, if those are your only 2 options, you're going to have to go with Keon, because we still don't know if Worthy's going to play today. Now, I did see earlier that he is apparently he practiced limited today. I actually was just looking at this like an hour ago. So he was limited in practice today as he was yesterday. So based on what we saw last week, it looks like that he could go. Now, given that he's been limited both days, like, I still don't trust this one. So I still think that there's a chance that he doesn't play. And if these are your only 2 options, then you're going to have to go with Keon. Like, you're just going to have to go with him. So if you do that, then Keon Coleman needs to go in your wide receiver slot. He can't go in your flex because it'll take up way too much space. So put him in your wide receiver slot. But if these are your 2 options, like, your question is a little bit answered for you, unfortunately, because we just don't know if Worthy's going to play or not. So I'd go with Keon. And but like, I will say this, like, if they were both healthy and I knew that Worthy was going to play, I would play Worthy. But I will say this also to end on it, which is that with Worthy, like, his offense is going to be in a similar position to what the Bills will be in tonight, which is that they're going to crush the Giants. They will, and they won't throw the ball that much. But the reason I would go with Worthy over Coleman is because, like, Worthy, in theory, will get the ball more ways than Keon will, particularly on wide receiver screens and wide receiver, end arounds and, that type of stuff. So, Yeah, I think if everything was even and they were on an even playing field as far as health goes, I'd go with Worthy, but your answer is pretty much right there in front of you since Worthy is injured right now. I appreciate the super chat. Samantha Fluger, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Sutton or T-Mac as flex, starting Nico and Adunze already. Thanks. Well, yeah, your starting two wide receivers are great. Like, Nico and Rome are fantastic. I know Nico hasn't done as much yet as he should, but he will. Like, we'll get to that point with Nico to where he's going to be a much better fantasy asset, and people will start to remember that from last year if you played last year. So Sutton or Tet McMillan basically comes down to, for me, with Cortland Sutton, the problem that and again, somebody had Cortland Sutton in one of my team breakdowns that I was doing earlier in the week. And, with Cortland Sutton, they have always done this with him. Like, every year he is really involved in one game, and then there's like one game once in a blue moon where he's like ignored, and they just don't look to him that much. And it's hard to tell because Denver's offense is really, really sketchy. Like, Sean Payton, I've always said this, he runs it like the mob. Like, he doesn't tell anybody outside of the family, much like the Godfather, what's going on inside his head. Like, he doesn't say anything. So you can never get like a full sense of what is he thinking. Does he think that the matchup is good for Sutton, or does he think it's bad? We don't ever know. But the bottom line is that this is a consistent theme that we see with Sutton so far. Now, with T-Mac, we haven't seen that. Like, he's clearly the wide receiver one in Carolina. I mean, just look at the targets on this guy. With Tet, he's got 19 targets on the season. And if you look at the trend graph on fsroundup.com, he had, let's go to targets. He had 8 targets in week 1 and 10 in week 2. So, like, this guy has been involved consistently through 2 weeks. Now, if Cortland Sutton had 30-point upside, which I think that is never happened for Cortland Sutton particularly, like, I would say probably play Sutton because, again, I think that this matchup versus the Chargers is one of those where he could take advantage of because he historically has. Now, on the other hand, we just don't have that level of upside with him. So for me, I'd rather take the more consistent wide receiver one that we know has upside too, but only has a floor that reaches a certain point. Because with Sutton, his floor's down here, and with Tet, his floor's like up here. So I think that Tet is the better option between the two. Appreciate the super chat, Samantha. RJ Bacani, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Good to see you in here tonight. If Egbuka is a no-go, Dobbins, Chubb, Tillman for the flex. So assuming Egbuka doesn't go, and I haven't seen enough yet to where I don't think he won't go. But let's just say that he doesn't go, right? Dobbins, Chubb, or Tillman. And this is an interesting one. I think people should post this in a poll as well. So with Tillman, obviously, I said this earlier with the Browns when I was talking about David Njoku at the beginning of the live stream. I think that the Browns will be throwing the ball a ton because they're going to get killed by the Packers. Like, they're going to have to throw a bunch. So, in theory, like, Tillman is a fine play considering his usage through the first 2 weeks. I mean, his usage has been very similar to Jerry Jeudy. I mean, it was like identical in week 1. And in week 2, it was still like he was out-targeted by Jerry Jeudy, but that was only by 1 target. Like, he was very much involved. So, like, I think Tillman's a fine play at this point. Now, my thing with J.K. Dobbins this week is that I think it's a revenge game narrative. I really do. Like, he's playing the Chargers, who gave him a shot, which I'm sure he appreciates on one hand. But, I mean, he's an athlete. He's a competitor. So, he's going to want to come in and show why they made a mistake moving on from him, considering they're running backs right now. So I do like Dobbins a lot this week, and I just like the Denver running game too. Like, Dobbins has clearly been the guy that you want. He was in on 27 plays last week compared to R.J. Harvey at 19 and Bidet at 13. Like, he's clearly the guy that you want. If you just look at usage, like, J.K. Dobbins, this is his backfield. And I think their offensive line is so great that regardless of opponent, he'll be able to get in the end zone. And then with Nick Chubb, I actually think Nick Chubb's got the best matchup of the bunch. I think he does. The thing with Nick Chubb is that his offensive line is straight garbage. And outside of one run last week, Nick Chubb realistically, he struggled on the ground versus a defense that I thought he could take advantage of. So I don't know if I want to ride that horse again, considering I've got other horses in the stable that I could ride. Now, Tillman, the problem with him ultimately is that this matchup I thought would be like Washington, for example. They could take advantage of Green Bay, right? Well, it turns out that Green Bay's defense was so stout that they didn't really let anything happen in that game either. So I'm reluctant to play Browns options because of how strong that Green Bay defense is. And with JK, on the other hand, the matchup on paper isn't great, but at the same time, it's a revenge game narrative that you can't quantify. And he is also just behind an offensive line that's great against everybody. So Dobbins is my pick this week if Egbuka can't go. Appreciate the super chat, RJ Bacani. Will Sarauhen. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Sorry if I butchered your name. Start 2, sit 1. Keon Coleman, Keenan Allen, and Ricky Pearsall. So I will definitely play Keenan Allen for sure. He's the for sure ski in this group right here that I would definitely play. Now, the problem again is that with Ricky Pearsall in particular, you're dealing with an injury-related thing. And it's different because Ricky Pearsall himself is not the problem. The problem is Juwan Jennings. And Juwan Jennings, I haven't seen the update today, so let's look together. So Juwan Jennings missed practice yesterday. Let's see what he did today. Not practicing today either. So it's hard to tell because, the thing about it is, a lot of these players, especially when you're a veteran, you can miss 2 straight days of practice to begin the week. The Friday practice is the determining factor. And that's why I come out with my must start and sit wide receiver, running back, defense videos on Friday and Saturday because we have injury reports at that time. And Friday is the big day. Wednesday and Thursday, you can go out there and not practice. And you can practice on Friday and you'll be good to go. Friday is the big determining day. So it's early. It's too early to tell on Juwan Jennings. And therefore, too early to tell on Ricky because Ricky wasn't uninvolved last week, but Ricky was definitely the wide receiver 2 in Mac Jones's eyes. And it looks like it's going to be Mac Jones again this week. So I think I'd have to go with Keon because I just don't know if I want to take it's not even the risk. I don't think there's much risk involved because I think Ricky is going to be fine to a certain extent, but I don't think that Ricky has the upside that Keon does if Juwan Jennings ends up playing. I think his upside will probably be 12 points, maybe, whereas Keon could get 20. Let's say, because in theory, what I've been saying about this game tonight is that I think it's going to be a blowout. Yes, I do believe that, but in theory, what if Keon Coleman is one of their big scorers tonight? It could absolutely happen. So, yeah, I think I'll go with Keon over Ricky Pearsall along with Keenan Allen because, again, we just don't have enough information as we sit here today about Juwan Jennings and what's going to happen. Appreciate the super chat, Mr. Will. Jimmy No Shoes, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Should I trade Judkins for Hampton, 10-man PPR? That's a great question. So, I just went through Hampton and my issues with him. And I was basically saying, I would not trade Hampton right now because you're not going to get the value that you should get for Hampton when he recovers his value, which I believe it will happen. Now, this is a great example of a buy low on a guy like this because let's just play things out with Quinshaw Judkins for a second, right? So let's just assume really quick that Judkins doesn't get suspended at all this season. He doesn't end up on the commissioner's exempt list. He doesn't get suspended. None of that stuff. And he just plays the whole season. What's the legitimate upside with a Cleveland Browns running back? Well, I can tell you this, like Quinshon Judkins, based on usage this past week, is going to be their running back one. And it may, in fact, be a workhorse role. Now, I don't rule out the fact that I think that Dylan Sampson and Ford could both have a role, but I do think Judkins will be the lead guy. But in reality, right, like the quarterback carousel that they're about to experience here soon, because Flacco's going to keep losing games. They're about to switch quarterbacks here by midseason, I would say, and I think that's a generous time frame as well. It could be sooner. Like, realistically, they're not favored in many games this year, and I just don't see a world where a Browns running back really has that much upside. Because this isn't an offense that's going to be like leading most teams and they're going to be just running the clock out when they're up like 17-10. That's just not going to be the case for the Browns. They're going to be in a lot of games where they're getting crushed because that defense isn't that good. And number two is that they're just going to be in positions to where they're going to have to throw the ball a bunch. So, like, if you play things out for Judkins, the upside is minimum. It's smaller than Hampton's. And again, this is my point. When I've been breaking down teams that have Amari and Hampton, I keep telling them, you have no choice but to hold on to Amari and Hampton. But if this guy is really willing to give you Amari and Hampton for Quinshon Judkins, I would absolutely do that. Because both of these guys are riding your bench right now, right? Like maybe Judkins can go in your lineup this week as a flex option, or if you're dealing with running back injury to Aaron Jones or something like that, like he can go in your lineup. But so can Hampton. And so I do think that Hampton, just like realistically, when you're making trades, you have to play out the long term. And I think that long term, Hampton has the more upside than Judkins has. So I would make that trade. Appreciate the super chat. Jessica Lauren, what's going on? Good to see you in here tonight, Jessica. Appreciate the super chat. Bad idea to start Barner over Kincaid. Slim pickings on waivers because everyone in the league has two tight ends. That's a real bummer. Yeah. In my team breakdowns too, I also kind of discuss about how I'm fundamentally against the idea of hosting two tight ends, two quarterbacks on your roster. I just don't think it's a very good idea. I think that most of the times it's not worth it. But in times like this where like you're telling me that your league is notorious for, housing two quarterbacks or two tight ends rather, then it's a bummer because the waiver wire is just not as fruitful. You see, with Barner, it's really interesting because he through the first 2 weeks, has actually been the more involved player than Elijah Arroyo. Last week, Arroyo did have the same amount of target share, but Barner, again, if you look at snap counts, Barner dominated snap counts. Like, he was in on 58 snaps compared to Elijah Arroyo at 26. Routes run, it was actually not that much different, but A.J. Barner is still leading that category as well. Now, he got the touchdown last week. I don't think people should overreact to that necessarily, but I don't think that Barner's in much danger to lose a role to Arroyo just yet. And again, given what I've been saying all night so far about the Bills tonight, I think they're going to crush the Dolphins. So you're going to have this really limited window, basically, of pass catchers that can actually do significant damage in fantasy. And if Kincaid doesn't have a touchdown, or if he doesn't have 5 catches by halftime, like, it's probably not going to happen. So there is that risk there. I'm still going to have to say Kincaid. And the reason I will is because if it was my roster, I want to play for upside. And with Barner, I just don't really see that upside quite as much. Like, I get it. Barner has been involved because of the fact that, he's been in on these routes and everything like that. But, I mean, it's still very minimum volume, right? Like, 2 targets in week 1, 3 targets in week 3. 3 targets in week 2. Like, it's just minimal involvement. So, when you look at Kincaid, he's been more involved and more important to this offense on a weekly basis. He's got 10 targets on the season. And if you look at the targets on a gamely basis, 4 targets in week 1, 6 in week 2. And 6 in week 2 actually came from their beatdown that they put on the Jets. So, yeah, I think that for me, like, there's just not enough there for me to be able to realistically tell anyone in my audience that sitting Kincaid in favor of a tight end that gets 2 to 3 targets per game when Kincaid got 6 last week and 4 the week before is a good idea. I'd play Kincaid. I see your point, Jessica, but I'm not going to do that. I'll play Kincaid. Appreciate the super chat, Jessica. And again, all this information right here, this is all free on FS Roundup. And there is a link to fsroundup.com in the chat and in the description. So go check it out. Start a poll. Grits, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Pick 1 wide receiver and 1 flex. Keon Coleman, Deebo Samuel, Quinshon Judkins, Travis Hunter, Troy Franklin, Quinshon Judkins, Harvey. Okay, Quentin Johnston was the other one. That's right. Also, tight end Kelsey or Johnson. QB Dak or Goff. Okay, so let's pick 1 wide receiver and 1 flex first. So, Keon, Deebo, Quentin Johnston, Travis Hunter, Franklin, and Judkins, and Harvey. So I'm going to rule Harvey out. And I'm also, to maybe some unpopular opinion, I'll rule Troy Franklin out as well, because I'll play Judkins over both of those guys. And I would say that I would play Judkins over Travis Hunter this week, so I'll rule out Hunter as well. So we've got 4 options now. We've ruled out 3. So Keon, Deebo, Quentin Johnston, and Judkins are our options. So Deebo is definitely going in. Deebo is just, I think he's just several tiers above all these other guys. Deebo Samuel has been fantastic this year. And listen, at the end of the day, like, when it comes to Deebo Samuel, he's just too, like, the role that he's seeing is consistent. It's not a fluke. Like, what he brings to this offense is necessary because of Cliff Kingsbury's system. So, and my reason for saying that right now is because if Jaden Daniels misses this game, which it looks like it actually is a realistic possibility that Jaden Daniels misses. Last night I was saying I don't think there's a way that Jaden Daniels misses this game. I mean, they basically had like a mini bye week. So, like, I would figure Jaden Daniels is going to come back in and play this game. But I will say this, you know, if he doesn't play, I don't think it's going to negatively affect Deebo that much. I just don't. Because Deebo is being used exactly how Cliff wants him to be used. And Cliff Kingsbury is obsessed with screen passes for wide receivers. He's like notorious for being obsessed with wide receiver screens. So, yeah, I just think that at the end of the day, like, it's going to be really easy to move off of Deebo for most people, considering that Jaden wouldn't play. But we don't know that yet, and I do think that it doesn't matter quite as much as people think. Jaden's great. This is not a debate of, is Jaden Daniels great? Of course he's freaking great. My reason for saying this is because I think that with Jaden, he doesn't need Jaden to execute on the plays that he makes in their offense, which is a lot of short yardage stuff that just is basically getting him into space. So I'm going to go with Deebo for sure as one of them. Quentin Johnston, you know, it's funny because I think that it's really hard to tell when you have your wide receiver one in theory, which is either Keenan Allen or Ladd McConkey. They're both slot guys, right? So, like, it's harder to tell which wide receiver Pat Surtain is going to be covering the majority of this week, which is why I kind of think it's going to end up being Quentin Johnston. I actually do. I think Quentin Johnston really could be the guy that gets blanketed by Pat Surtain this week. And given the fact that Johnston is not in the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans category, like, I am not playing Johnston against Pat Surtain. And maybe he doesn't get bottled by Pat Surtain the whole game, but that's my default right now, is that I think Johnston will be the primary wide receiver. He's getting covered by Pat Surtain. So I do think that he's not going to go in my lineup. I'm going to play Keon and I'm going to play Debo because I think that, with Keon versus Judkins, actually, I need to deliberate this one a little bit more. Judkins versus Keon is closer because of the efficiency he showed last week versus the Ravens defense. And I think the Packers defense is better. But I will say this, that, if he's more involved in the passing game this week, he could definitely, in theory, salvage a week. But of course, I don't like the matchup. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to play Keon and I'm going to play Debo as my wide receiver and my flex. So let's go to the tight ends, which is Kelsey or Johnson. It's a very easy Juwan Johnson. Listen, guys, I've been saying this a lot, and I think I'm starting to get branded a little bit as like a Travis Kelce hater. Listen, guys, I acknowledge that Travis Kelce is the second or best tight end I've ever seen in my lifetime. Like Rob Gronkowski, Tony Gonzalez, Travis Kelce, they're all in this. Antonio Gates, like they're all in the same tier for me. I mean, I respect what Kelce has brought to the table, but it's over, guys. It's over. I mean, this guy is a 40-year-old pop star at this point, and he just looks bad. I mean, he looks like he's unfocused and he doesn't really care as much, and he just doesn't look like the same player because he's not. So even last week, like, he was involved plenty, and he had a decent fantasy output, but with Juwan Johnson, like, what we're seeing with him is very sustainable. I mean, he is so involved on a weekly basis. And, the thing with Johnson is he's actually leaving meat on the bone. Like, Johnson has had several drops this year. Several. So he has not executed the fantasy upside that I think he realistically has. Whereas with Kelce, I think we're seeing like last week was like his ceiling for production. Obviously, in week one, he was better in fantasy because he got in the end zone. He had that free play, basically. But last week, on a volume production basis, that was the cap. Johnson, like, you're getting better output, and I don't think we've seen the ceiling yet of Juwan Johnson. So give me Juwan Johnson all day. I don't care what the matchup is. It's just a fundamental difference between the two players. And then Dak or Goff. Some people may scoff at this. I'm actually going to go with Dak. I ranked my quarterbacks yesterday, and what I realized is that, listen, guys, it's Jared Goff gets a bad rap for when he goes on the road. Like, he has a bad reputation when he goes on the road. And that's actually not the case. Like, Goff actually statistically has done well on the road. And in fantasy football, like, it doesn't really matter that much whether he's on the road. It's just not that big of a deal. My issue, and I've been saying it all week, so it shouldn't come as a shock if you've been watching me, is that the Ravens are just dominant against NFC teams. Lamar is a dominant player against the NFC. And the reality is that when you get up, if the Ravens get up to a 21-0 lead on the Lions by the beginning of the second quarter, like, that is going to make Goff make mistakes. Because Goff is prone to mistakes. That's one thing about Goff, is that you put him in a hole. I mean, just look at last year in the playoffs versus the Commanders. He made a lot of mistakes in that game. Well, because he was in a hole, and he was having to try to climb out of it. So I think Goff is actually really prone to mistakes this week. Whereas with Dak, obviously Dak did really well in fantasy last week, and so did Goff. But, Dak this week, the matchup versus the Bears, like, if it were week one, I would not be really in on it because I think the Bears defense is good when everybody's healthy. Well, they're dropping like flies right now. That team is falling apart. So Dallas looks much better offensively than I was expecting personally. I think Dak has looked pretty good for the most part, and I think that this matchup is actually just better. Like, I would play Dak over Goff. I think Goff is what's the way to put this? Like, I think Goff is this week's Justin Fields. And I don't want to, when I say that, like, I'm not saying Goff is going to get 1 point or 2 points as a fantasy quarterback this week, but I think he could get 10. Like, I think 10 to 12 is realistic outcome for Jared Goff. Like, where his ceiling is like 15 points. Because again, I'm really expecting mistakes from Goff this week. Whereas with Dak, I'm not expecting the same mistakes because he's looked pretty good, and also I think the matchup's just better. So I'll go with Dak, I'll go with Johnson, I will go with Keon and Debo. Appreciate the super chat. Addy Dixit, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Much love to you, bud. Well, I appreciate that. Pick 2. Egbuka, DJ Moore, Bill Krosky, Merritt. First of all, much love back at you. Egbuka, DJ Moore, or Bill Krosky. So if Egbuka goes, definitely Egbuka for sure. Like Egbuka, if he goes, like he absolutely needs to be in your starting lineup. It's not a question anymore of like, does Emeka Egbuka go in my lineup or does Quentin Johnson? No, it's like it's Emeka Egbuka. He goes in your lineup if he's healthy. So if he plays, Emeka Egbuka for sure. The real question is Bill versus DJ Moore. And listen, I've been kind of the wet blanket is the like I've been thinking about this, right? I've been the wet blanket on Bill Krosky this week. And it's not that I don't want him to do good. I have him in a dynasty league. Like I'm actively ready. Like he is locked and loaded for me. I'm hoping he does good. I really am. So I'm very much hoping for that. I just have to pump the brakes because I'm never going to lie to you guys about a player's, situation. And the reality of his situation is that if you look at it last week, even when Austin Eckler went down, which was late in the game, so he didn't have much to go off of, Jeremy McNichols came in right away. It was not Bill Krosky. So, like, McNichols, I do think is going to have a role. Now, apparently he's injured too right now, which I do find interesting and maybe an opportunity. But I will say this, that Bill, I don't think is going to handle the full workload. Like, I just don't think they're ready for that yet. So, it is worth noting. Now, with DJ Moore, the problem with DJ Moore is that DJ Moore is just flat out their wide receiver too now. Like, that's just the reality. He's still getting work, but he's not getting as much as Rome for sure, and he's not getting anything down the field. Everything with DJ is, like, very short. They're trying to get DJ into space. He's not their downfield threat like Rome is. So, DJ has limitations. I would personally go with Bill because with Bill, at least we can get the potential of a big week. I think Bill has 20-point potential this week versus the Raiders. I really do. But I will say that DJ, like, he also has the potential to give you 6 or 7 points. With DJ, you're going to get basically that same floor and not the same upside. I mean, last week he had 9.6 fantasy points, and the week before he had 8.8. So, like, this is not exactly a player that's, like, dominating on all ends here. I mean, he's limited. So, yeah, I'll go with Bill Krosky over DJ Moore. But obviously, if Egbuka doesn't play, you're going to have to start both these guys. Appreciate the super chat. All right, we're coming up on game time here. So let me go through some more questions. I'm going to speed it up a little bit here, though. Demetrios, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Hey, Ryan, do I start Tyreek or Pickens? I also have CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. So the CD and Dak stack, I love it this week. I think this week it could boom. Last week it was already good, but I think this week it could do really, really well. Tyreek or Pickens. Obviously, Tyreek's playing tonight, so you're going to have to make that decision. I'd go Pickens. I get it. Like, you have that stack already with CD and Dak, and typically it's like it's risky. Not typically. It's risky to go with 2 wide receivers and a quarterback. You have 3 players on the same team on your fantasy team starting. It's risky. But I think the upside is so high for all those players again this week. I think they realistically could put up, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it, and I have to say it. I think they could put up 40 points again on the Bears. I really do think it's possible. So I just think that upside is really high again this week. So, and with Tyreek and the Dolphins, like I just don't see that upside this week at all. I think they're going to get absolutely flat out embarrassed tonight. I think it really will be an embarrassment. So I get it. We kind of saw a resurgence with Tyreek last week, but I just have no interest in playing Tyreek anyways. And it's not just Tyreek. I don't have interest in playing Waddle. I don't have interest in playing anybody on the Miami Dolphins except Devon Achane. So I'm going to go with Pickens, even though you have Dak and CD already in the lineup. It's risky, but I'm willing to do it. Appreciate the super chat, Demetrios. Okay. Daniel Barnes, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Traded Jaylen Warren and Ricky P for Brian Thomas Jr. and Bill. Great. Oh my gosh, fantastic. I mean, I don't know how you did that, but that's fantastic. I mean, it's like Jaylen Warren and Ricky Pearsall. I mean, they have upside in their own right. I'm not trying to diminish them because they do have upside, but like you can get Brian Thomas Jr. and Bill. That's fantastic. Bill, again, we haven't seen the upside, and clearly they're not watching me because I said this. I've been saying this all week, and even last week. You cannot trade Bill Krosky. If you have him on your team, I'm speaking to all of you. If you have him on your team, do not trade Bill Krosky. You don't know the upside yet, which is a great thing because this guy is on a winning offense. You want pieces on that winning offense, and he could be their lead back very soon. You do not trade him. But the fact that you got him for what you did is fantastic. And obviously, Brian Thomas Jr., I called a buy low this week. So, oh my gosh, very impressed with this trade. Fantastic. Appreciate the super chat, Daniel. Mason Pierce, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Full PPR rest of season. Chase Brown in London versus Henry and AJ Brown. So I said this last night. And I've been telling people this, and I've had a couple team breakdowns that I've done over the week who have Chase Brown as well. Obviously, Chase Brown, like, there's concern without Joe Burrow there, and it's logical concerns. But at the same time, I will say this. You know, the thing with Chase Brown is that I think he's going to be okay because of the fact that if you look at his usage on FSRoundup.com, like, he is not in any danger of any other running back taking production from him. The first 2 weeks, it's been all him. Yes, P. Ryan's in on snaps, but he's not doing anything. It's taking touches, I guess, away from Chase Brown in a way because it's when he's not on the field. But, I mean, realistically, he had 19 touches last week. I mean, just look at if you go to Chase Brown's page and you click on trends, this is all on FS Roundup. You can go see the total amount of carries, like 16 in week 2, 21 in week 1, and the targets, 3 in each week. So, like, this guy's seeing 19-plus opportunities on a weekly basis. Something will break his way. It will. Drake London, I also think that things are going to start to break his way as well. I think that last week he wasn't involved from a game plan perspective because realistically they didn't need him to be. They were never in danger of losing that game, really. And number 2, I think injury possibly played a factor as well. So then you look at London or Henry versus AJ. I think Henry is going to be great. Like, he's definitely the better option between Chase Brown, but London is definitely the better option between him and AJ Brown. It's not even close. So I think that when you kind of look at the differences between the two, I would probably take Henry because I think he has more realistic chance to be a league winner than Drake. And like I said, he's the better option than Chase Brown now. And I think London will be good, but I don't think he's a league winner. Whereas with Derrick Henry, like, if he continues to look great on a per touch basis, like, Henry is going to be a potential league winner this year. 100%. So I think Henry is the side that you want to go with. I get it. AJ Brown is definitely down bad right now. Like, it's clear. But AJ Brown, I think there's a possibility that he gets traded. And if he does, it's actually going to be good for him because it'll improve his fantasy upside if he leaves Philadelphia. I think it's very possible he gets traded. And if that's the case, you'll be winning this trade by far. But I would take Derrick Henry. Appreciate the super chat. Uh, Lucius Varanus 44. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Need 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. Kupp, JK, Hill, Kupp, or Sutton. Okay, so your 2 wide receivers are going to be Courtland Sutton, and I would play Tyreek Hill over Cooper Kupp. I would. I just don't. I'm not buying what we saw last week. I mean, guys, like what people need to understand and draw a correlation from. Exercise some pattern recognition a little bit, because both weeks, both teams that have played the Pittsburgh Steelers have had a field day offensively. The running games and the passing games. So Cooper Kupp last week had 8 targets, 7 catches, and 70 yards. But I mean, look at the week prior. He had 3.5 fantasy points in week 1, borderline droppable, and then he had 16 in week 2. But look at the usage. Like 3 targets in week 1, 8 in week 2. I mean, this guy just realistically is washed. Like, believe your eyes. What you're seeing is not as good of a player as he used to be. And the Steelers, again, do some pattern recognition. The Steelers are an atrocious defense that everybody will take advantage of. So I think that Tyreek is a better player than Kupp at this point, and that just kind of shows how low I am on Kupp. So I would play him. Those are my 2 wide receivers, Sutton and Tyreek. And then my flex, I would play JK easily over Cooper Kupp. I want that running game in Denver. It's not the greatest matchup. I get it, Kupp has a better matchup, but I just love the running game in Denver. And again, I think when we look back on this week, it'll be very similar to what happened with the Jets in week 2. Now, Seattle's going to win against the Saints. Like, I'd be shocked if they didn't. It could happen, but I expect Seattle to do well against the Saints. But I also expect them to not have as much fantasy upside as they did the week prior versus Steelers. See what I'm saying? So I would go with Sutton and Hill as my 2 wide receivers, and I would go ahead and flex JK. Appreciate the super chat. Okay, we're coming up on the wire here. So, Tyler Sperry, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. In redraft, what is Tyreek Hill worth? I want to trade for him. Oh, I mean, what is he worth? You want to trade for him? Well, listen, based off the fact that he's coming off a good week, he's going to be worth more than I would pay for sure. I mean, Tyler, I know that you've been around my live streams before for years, and first of all, appreciate your loyalty. Appreciate you always coming back here. But you may not pay as much attention to me in the offseason, and I was so off of Tyreek all offseason. I mean, I thought his price was egregious. I didn't want anything to do with it. And last week, he salvaged a lot of people's ideas of what Tyreek could be. So his trade value is going to be too high for me to entertain. And I'll be honest here. I'll give you ideas of what his worth is, but I'm reluctant to do that. And I feel obligated to tell you that, because the reason why I feel reluctant is because I just think it's such a disastrous move to try to acquire him right now. Like, he's on a team that's getting worse. He could very easily be traded at some point. But the reality is, I don't know if he will be, because I don't know if any other team wants to deal with him either. Like, he's becoming Antonio Brown. And the difference is, I think Antonio Brown was a better player when he was becoming this problem. I don't think Tyreek's the same player. Like, I really don't. So I got to be honest here. I'm really reluctant to go through this with you, but I will, because the reason I want to say that I'm reluctant, just to be honest with you, but obviously you asked me the question, so I have to go through what his worth is. His worth right now, I would say, is maybe a round lower or 2 rounds lower than where you drafted him at. I would say that if you want to get Tyreek Hill, you'll have to trade Terry McLaurin. You might have to trade, since Terry's doing bad, you might have to trade Rome Odunze. You might have to trade, like, I'm going through ideas in my head. You'd have to trade Terry. You'd have to trade Rome Odunze. You'd have to trade Tet McMillan. You'd have to trade T. Higgins probably, and you may not even get that. George Pickens, you could probably make that trade, which I think it's probably my favorite of the bunch. Those are like what I would say his realistic worth is, though. Like, you have to be careful. Like, I don't think that Tyreek is worth it. I see what you're saying, but I will say, like, it's not a move that I would personally make. And I think that what I just went through is his real value in trades in fantasy right now, because the community was always higher on Tyreek than I was this year. It's gotten lower, but I will say that it's still too high for me. And I think the ideas that I threw out there, that's probably what he's worth. Appreciate the super chat. Okay, let's go through a couple more. I'm going to speed race just through a couple more questions before game time. Like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. And if I do not answer your question tonight, go to FS Roundup. There's a link in the chat. You can go to Stats Roundup page and you can post a poll. And these are live updated. You can get the consensus opinion on a player. So if I vote on Ted McMillan right here, you'll see live results right there. 50-50 right now. So go join the polls, answer other people's, be helpful, and also post a poll that you want answered as a start-sit question as well. Trade Higgins for ETN? Yes, I would absolutely trade T. Higgins for ETN. Should I play Keon? It just really depends. I mean, I'd play Keon Coleman over Tyreek Hill. I'd play him over Jalen Waddle. Should I start Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill, and Egbuka, or Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill, and Hampton, or Garrett Wilson, Egbuka, and Hampton? Okay. I would play Egbuka for sure. I would play the combo of Wilson, Tyreek, and Egbuka. I think I would play Tyreek over Hampton. Olave, T. Higgins, or DK for the flex. I would personally go with DK Metcalf. Just traded Chuba for K9 straight up. How'd I do? Also, Keon or Terry this week. Chuba for K9 straight up. I would have kept Chuba personally. I just think the usage is still way off in Seattle. It's hard to predict. Keon or Terry this week, I would personally go with Terry. J-Mo or Keon, I would go with Keon. Keon or Johnson, chat. I would go with Johnson. I mean, it's hard to tell what Johnson you're talking about. I'm assuming you're saying Juwan Johnson. I would go with Juwan Johnson over Keon. I would. London or T-Mac, I would go with Drake London. Okay, guys, that'll do it. Go to FS Roundup, post a start-sit poll, join in on the conversation with others, be helpful, and also post your poll on there as well to get it answered. If you want a full team breakdown from me, you can do that as well by signing up for the premium subscription. And after your 12-day free trial ends and you're officially a customer, I will break down your team for you. And all you have to do is just email us at the email that you see on the site what your full team looks like. Like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support, and let's enjoy a game that I think is going to be weak tonight. So I'll see you guys after the game tonight. Peace out.